My wife's company's event planner called. Your wife, the manager, asked to remove you from the guest list, but she wants to keep the $70,000 deposit you paid. I smiled and said, actually, cancel the entire event. She hesitated, but sir, you're not the manager. I replied calmly, no, but I own the company. It was one of those mornings that already felt expensive before anything even happened. The sun had that smug, too bright shine that makes you question every adult decision that led you to sitting in a cafe where the Wi-Fi barely worked, but the barista had tattoos that made you afraid to complain. I was halfway through my $7.25 caramel latte, half coffee, half regret, when my phone buzzed across the marble table like a nervous intern. Hi, this is Chloe from Starflare Events. The voice said, all chipper nerves and shaky professionalism. Now, usually, when someone says your name with that much hesitation, you already know the next sentence is about to be stupid. I leaned back, sipped the overpriced liquid candy, and gave a polite, hey there, Chloe, what's up? She cleared her throat like she was about to read the terms and conditions of my own humiliation. Your wife, Mrs. Bennett, the manager, requested that you be removed from the guest list for the company's anniversary gala. But she said you already paid the $70,000 deposit, and they'd like to keep it. For a second, I just blinked, not in shock, more in that quiet, spiritual disbelief you feel when you realize someone's audacity has evolved into a new species. I didn't choke on my coffee. I didn't even flinch. I just smiled, the kind of slow grin that makes people wonder if you're calm or if they should start running. Actually, I said, nice and soft, the way you talk to a puppy that just peed on your rug, cancel the entire event. There was a pause long enough to fit an entire therapy session. But sir, she stammered, you're not the manager. I took another sip. It tasted better now, less like caramel and more like victory. No, I said, but I own the company. The silence that followed could have been bottled and sold as instant regret. You could almost hear her soul buffering. Wait, she gasped, you own Brightline Holdings? Correct, I replied, casually brushing a crumb off my sleeve. The parent company. So, yeah, go ahead and cancel it. Send everyone home. We'll issue refunds where appropriate, which, spoiler alert, will not be appropriate. I could practically hear her jaw dislocate. The poor woman probably had a script for difficult brides, but not for the CEO of the building she was decorating. She mumbled a panicked, why yes, sir. I understand, and hung up so fast I could feel the wind from the digital slam. And just like that, my coffee tasted phenomenal. People always assume that revenge needs fireworks, but honestly, sometimes it's just one phone call during your mid-morning caffeine break. I stared out the cafe window, watching a group of joggers sprint past like they were being chased by their life choices, and thought about how bizarre it was that the woman I married, Haley Bennett, self-appointed queen of everything, had decided to uninvite me from a party I was paying for. To most people, that would sting. To me, it was hilarious. You see, I wasn't just some suit with a bank account. I was the bank account. Brightline Holdings wasn't just a company on paper. It was my baby, my Frankenstein monster built out of spreadsheets and caffeine and an ungodly amount of startup stress. Haley, my lovely and ambitious wife, managed one of our subsidiaries, Brightline Events and Design, a business she now ran like it was her own personal stage. For years, I let her have the spotlight. Let her shake hands, cut ribbons, post pictures about leadership on LinkedIn with captions like, success tastes better when shared with a great team. Conveniently forgetting to tag the guy who funded her espresso machine, her team, and the literal building she was standing in. So when Chloe from Starflare called to tell me I was off the guest list, I didn't get angry. Anger is loud. Anger gets you in headlines. I've always preferred quiet power moves, the kind that make people doubt whether you even blinked before detonating their plans. I checked the time. 10:30 a.m. If I canceled the event now, she'd find out around lunch, right when she'd be showing off her new designer dress to the interns. Perfect timing. I opened the Brightline portal on my phone, verified the accounts, and smiled at the beautiful sight of everything being under my name. Every license, every vendor, every insurance policy. My fingerprints were all over it like a digital signature of karma. I called the Starflare office back, just to make sure Chloe didn't faint and forget. She picked up on the first ring, voice trembling. Hello, Mr. Bennett. Hi, Chloe. Just confirming the cancellation went through. Make sure all correspondence goes directly to me. And, if Mrs. Bennett calls you, just tell her to contact finance. Yes, sir, she whispered, sounding like she'd just been knighted by a very polite villain. Good, I said, smiling so wide my reflection in the laptop looked smug. And Chloe? Yes. Next time you need approval for anything involving Brightline Holdings funds, skip the manager and call the owner. Click. The cafe door chimed as I stood to leave, and for once, I didn't feel like the tired husband of a career hurricane. I felt like myself again, Ryan Bennett, man who signs checks and cancels parties before noon. Outside, the October air smelled like roasted coffee beans and impending drama. I could already imagine Haley's expression when she got the email from Starflare. That slow motion crumble between confusion and outrage. She'd probably think it was a mistake at first. Then she'd call me. Then she'd remember she'd just uninvited me that morning in front of half the office. I took my time walking back to the car, savoring the peace before the storm. You don't get many moments of pure satisfaction in life. This one deserved a slow-motion soundtrack. The first ping hit as I unlocked the door. Incoming call, Haley. Of course. I let it ring out. Twice. She tried again. Decline. A text popped up instead. What did you do? I typed back, just what you asked. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. If anxiety had a Morse code, that was it. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the coffee buzz had morphed into a full-on adrenaline high. I turned off the engine, reclined the seat, and laughed. Like, actual laugh. The kind of sound I hadn't made since the day I discovered my accountant had spelled my name right on a tax deduction. $70,000. That's how much she'd planned to burn on a single night of champagne selfies and corporate peacocking. 70 grand to rent a ballroom, order overpriced lobster tails, and listen to a jazz quartet play to investors who couldn't tell a balance sheet from a menu. The same investors who would now be receiving cancellation notices signed by me. Karma wasn't just poetic, it was punctual. I went inside, set the empty coffee cup on the counter, and stared at the fridge like it owed me an explanation for the last 5 years of marriage. We weren't always like this. Back when Haley and I first met, she was funny, charming, ambitious, and, more importantly, she laughed at my terrible jokes. We built everything together, late nights, early mornings, frozen pizza dinners over spreadsheets. But somewhere between we and I, she decided the story sounded better with only one name on the cover. So fine. She could have the spotlight. I'd just own the stage. At noon, my phone exploded. Missed calls, texts, emails from middle managers trying to sound calm while spelling my name wrong. I ignored them all. I wasn't going to explain a single thing until Haley did something first. Let her spin. Let her sweat. Let her Google, can your husband legally cancel your event if he owns the parent company? I poured myself a glass of bourbon. Yeah, bourbon at noon. Judge me later. And toasted silently to my reflection in the kitchen window. To the uninvited guest, I said, taking a slow sip, may your enemies always RSVP late. The drink burned, but in that satisfying way that tells you you're alive, powerful, and slightly petty, the holy trinity of male recovery. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was from my lawyer, Sharon Wells. She didn't even say hello. Ryan, she said, voice sharp with amusement. Did you just nuke your wife's event? Define nuke, I said. The venue's on fire with calls, and Haley's office is trending on internal chat like a bad reality show. I grinned. Then yeah, nuke. She laughed. I love my job. Send me a bill, I said. Haley can cover it. The rest of the afternoon played like a slow-motion comedy. By 2 o'clock, the Starflare Instagram account had quietly deleted the post about Brightline's exclusive anniversary gala. By 3, my assistant sent me a message saying half the vendors were demanding clarification. By 4, Haley's mother texted me. Ryan, sweetheart, please call Haley. She's very upset. I replied, she'll be fine. Tell her to hydrate. It was bliss. Pure, caffeinated bliss. That night, I sat on the porch, bourbon in one hand, laptop in the other, watching the digital carnage unfold. Emails stacked like dominoes, each one a little funnier than the last. Urgent. Event canceled. Need explanation. Urgent. Is this real? Can someone call HR? I didn't respond to a single one. Silence is the most luxurious answer money can buy. When the sky turned purple and the first stars came out, I realized I was smiling again. A real one this time, not the polite kind you wear in boardrooms. Haley had tried to erase me from my own story, and instead, I'd just rewritten the plot. For the first time in months, maybe years, the world felt balanced again. I wasn't just the background investor funding someone else's applause. I was the reason the lights stayed on, and now, I was the guy who turned them off. I raised my glass to the quiet night, the canceled gala, and the confused chaos that would roll into tomorrow. To control, I whispered, and to coffee that finally tastes right. You know those couples you see at networking events who look like a success story straight out of a glossy magazine? The husband standing politely in the corner while his wife commands the room, shaking hands, laughing too loudly, pretending she invented charisma? Yeah, that was us. Except I was the idiot funding the magazine subscription. My name's Ryan Bennett, 41, allegedly mature, CEO of Brightline Holdings, though my wife prefers to call me Ryan from finance, like I'm some middle management spreadsheet enthusiast she met at a bar once. She, on the other hand, is Haley Bennett, the manager of Brightline Events, which is adorable because that company happens to be one of 7 subsidiaries under my umbrella. Meaning, I built it, I bankroll it, and technically, I could delete her job faster than she deletes our anniversary reminders. Don't get me wrong, I used to adore her ambition. Back when we met, she was an assistant with big dreams, big opinions, and a bigger collection of motivational coffee mugs. She'd stay up late researching vendors, scribbling ideas, building pitch decks like her life depended on it. And it worked, because I believed in her. I invested in her. Not just emotionally, but literally. I was the silent partner who wasn't supposed to stay silent forever. But somewhere along the way, Haley, my wife, became Haley, the brand. The woman who used to fall asleep on my shoulder while we brainstormed client lists started introducing me at events like I was part of the furniture. "This is Ryan," she'd say with a tight smile. "He works in finance." "Ma'am, I am finance. I'm the reason your Wi-Fi bill clears on time. But sure, let's pretend I just handle petty cash." Every time she said it, I'd feel that little sting, the one you don't admit hurts because you're too proud to look insecure. And every time, I'd just smile, sip my drink, and remind myself that silent power is still power. My lawyer, Sharon, calls it strategic passivity. I call it revenge simmering in low heat. Now, I've learned that ego is the most expensive addiction in corporate America. Haley had overdosed. The woman was high on applause, running on adrenaline and compliments from people who'd sell her soul for a LinkedIn shout-out. She started treating me like an optional extra in her success story. Like I was lucky she hadn't upgraded to a newer model husband with better PR. So, when the Starflare planner told me I was removed from my own event's guest list, it didn't even register as shocking anymore. It felt inevitable, like the universe finally decided to hit play on the karma playlist I'd been building since year 3 of our marriage. I didn't react out of anger. No, anger's too loud. Anger's what gets you called emotional in court later. I reacted with curiosity, which is a far more dangerous state of mind. Curiosity is what made Eve bite the apple and made me log into Brightline's internal systems at 11:47 p.m. that same night with a whiskey in hand and an attitude problem. And boy, what a sight. Invoices stacked like confessions. Haley's department had been spending money like a college freshman with a new credit card. Flower arrangements for boardrooms. Designer centerpieces for client meetings. A team bonding trip to Maui for 5 people, 4 of whom mysteriously had her last name. I chuckled into my glass. Team bonding, huh? The only thing being bonded was my patience. Still, the part that hit me hardest wasn't the money. I had plenty of that. It was the narrative. Every public-facing document, every company profile, every press mention listed Haley as founder and managing director of Brightline Events. Founder. Let that sink in. Founder of a company that literally exists inside the corporate structure of my holding firm. It's like your roommate claiming they invented the apartment because they bought a plant. She had rewritten history, our history, and turned me into a footnote. But here's the thing, I don't shout. I don't throw things. I don't slam doors or write long passive-aggressive Facebook posts about toxic dynamics. I plan. Because while Haley was busy curating her image, I was curating evidence. Paper trails, email threads, bank transfers. The kind of quiet ammunition you can use to blow up someone's PR empire without ever raising your voice. I remember sitting in my office that night, watching the cursor blink on the company dashboard and whispering to myself, "You forgot who pays for the lights, sweetheart." The next morning, Haley was already in full CEO cosplay. She waltzed into the kitchen in her pencil skirt and girl boss energy, Bluetooth headset glued to her ear, barking orders at someone like she was running NASA instead of planning corporate brunches. I poured my coffee slowly, deliberately, the way villains do before the third act twist. "Morning," I said. She gave a distracted MHM while typing furiously on her phone. "Big day?" I asked. "Always," she said, not looking up. "Investor calls. The gala team. Press outreach. I might be late tonight." I smiled. "That's okay. You can tell them all I said hi, assuming I'm still on the guest list." She froze. Just for a second. A glitch in the matrix. Then she laughed it off like she hadn't just been caught mid-deletion. "Don't start, Ryan. It's a professional event. Clients only." "Oh, I see," I said. "And I guess being the owner doesn't make me a client." "Ryan, don't make this about you," she said, pulling her blazer on. That line, that cursed, gender-neutral dagger of a sentence that every self-absorbed spouse uses right before things implode. "Don't make this about you." "Honey, it's literally about me." I wanted to say something sharp, but instead, I just nodded, smiled, and thought, "You're right. I'll make it about us, just not the way you think." People like Haley thrive on control. They love crafting perfect optics. So the greatest way to dismantle them isn't by yelling. It's by flipping the lights off while they're still posing for the cameras. When she left for work that morning, I sat back down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started pulling strings. Brightline Holdings wasn't just a name, it was a spider web. Every subsidiary was tied to it by contracts, funding streams, and authorizations, all signed by me. I was the invisible god in the system. Every invoice she'd ever approved, every deposit she'd ever received, every vendor she'd ever bragged about, all of it came from my account. That's when it hit me. I didn't need to confront her. I didn't even need to raise my voice. All I had to do was quietly remind the world who was really in charge. By the time Chloe from Starflare made that now famous call, the chessboard was already set. Haley thought she was playing checkers. Now, I'll be honest, a small part of me missed the old her. The one who used to bring me burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings because she'd read somewhere that breakfast in bed strengthens relationships. The woman who once called me at 3 a.m. just to tell me she'd landed her first big client. But people change. Ambition changes them faster. She started chasing admiration like it was oxygen, and I started watching from the sidelines, wondering when she'd remember to breathe. Sometimes, I'd see her practicing speeches in the mirror, adjusting her hair, perfecting her smile, testing her applause breaks. Once, she caught me watching and said, "You should be proud of me." "I am," I'd said, and I meant it. Back then. Now, I was just done. Done playing the quiet partner in someone else's ego play. So, after the call with Chloe, after the caffeine and the chaos, I realized something crucial. Haley hadn't just removed me from a guest list. She'd freed me from the illusion that we were still a team. And freedom, my friend, is worth more than $70,000. Later that night, I got a text from her. "Haley, please tell me you didn't really cancel it." Me. "Check your email." 2 minutes later, "Haley, are you insane?" I typed back, "Maybe, but I'm rich, so it's cute." I stared at the bubbles as she typed and erased a dozen times. Then nothing. Silence. I poured another drink and said out loud, to no one, "That's what happens when you forget who signs your paycheck, Mrs. Manager." And for the first time in months, I actually slept well. No spreadsheets, no financial projections running through my head, just peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally take back control of your own story. It's funny, marriage is supposed to be a merger, right? Two entities joining forces to build something stronger. But somewhere along the way, Haley started treating it like a hostile takeover. She tried to own the narrative, the company, the image. And me? I just quietly bought back the stock. People think revenge is about making someone else hurt. It's not. It's about restoring balance. And as I drifted off that night, I knew balance was coming. Fast. She wanted to be the face of Brightline? Fine. But I was about to remind her who held the strings behind the curtain. and I was going to do it with a smile. That night, after a day of pretending everything was normal, I sat on the couch with my laptop, a glass of bourbon, and a playlist called Motivation for Petty Kings. The house was quiet. Haley was still at the office, which translated to sulking somewhere expensive. The silence was so sweet I could have bottled it and sold it next to the scented candles she used to buy in bulk when she was manifesting abundance. I cracked my knuckles, logged into the Brightline corporate portal, and there it was, my digital kingdom glowing back at me in corporate blue. Every contract, every signature, every cent that had ever touched one of our subsidiaries, all stamped with my name. Ryan E. Bennett, owner. You know that scene in every superhero movie where the guy realizes his powers? Yeah, that was me. Except my cape was a faded hoodie and my superpower was legal control. I scrolled through the files like a tourist in my own empire. Payrolls, invoices, vendor lists. It was all there, sitting quietly like it owed me rent. People in Haley's department probably thought I was some silent investor, the kind of husband who just shows up for photos and pays the bills like it's his hobby. They had no idea I was the ghost in their machine, the reason their paychecks didn't bounce, the man literally keeping the Wi-Fi on while they called me finance guy in the break room. Funny thing, ghosts see everything. One folder caught my eye, Starflare Gala invoices. I opened it, and sweet mother of markup, the spending was biblical. Champagne fountains, floral walls, crystal chandeliers that cost more than some people's college tuition. A receipt for 12 grand labeled table accent crystals. I laughed so hard I almost spilled my bourbon. Table accent crystals, I muttered. Because normal tables just aren't smug enough. I took a screenshot. For the memories. Scrolling further, I saw Haley's signature on every approval. Her digital autograph, looping and elegant, like she'd signed with perfume instead of ink. I hovered over one particularly juicy line item. Entertainment, private DJ package, $18,500. I remembered her saying the company needed to elevate its image. I guess elevate now meant launch a private music festival for narcissists. And yet, the best part? Every contract ended with one small line of legal poetry. Approved by Ryan Bennett, CEO, Brightline Holdings. That's the thing about being quiet. You learn to let people hang themselves with the rope you provided. I leaned back, sipping my drink. The living room lights reflected off the laptop screen, casting that cinematic glow that always shows up right before the protagonist does something irreversible. My reflection looked calm, too calm, maybe a little smug. But when your wife just tried to erase you from your own event, smug feels therapeutic. I wasn't planning to explode. I wasn't even planning to argue. I've seen what public fights do to people in our social circle. One viral clip, one sources close to the couple say, and suddenly you're trending under hashtag divorce goals. No, I preferred my destruction with a side of quiet paperwork. Clean, legal, final. So I picked up my phone and called Sharon Wells, my lawyer and unofficial therapist for corporate drama. Sharon's the kind of woman who could negotiate peace treaties during lunch and still make it home for spin class. She once got me out of a disastrous merger with a single paragraph that started, per Clause 14b, my client refuses stupidity as a business model. She answered on the second ring. Ryan, she said, voice calm, but with that you up to something edge. Evening, Sharon. You busy saving the world? Only halfway. What's on fire? I smiled. Haley tried to uninvite me from the Brightline Gala. There was a pause. She what? Removed me from the guest list. Told the planners I'm not welcome. 70 grand deposit, all paid from corporate funds. Oh my God, she laughed. Deep, full-bodied, lawyer with wine-in-hand laughter. Please tell me you're recording this marriage for educational purposes. Tempting, I said. Anyway, I canceled the event. Her laughter stopped. You actually did it? Effective immediately. Jesus Christ, Ryan. You didn't just light a match, you installed a fireplace. Maybe. I swirled my bourbon. But the house needed remodeling. She exhaled, probably rubbing her temples. All right. Technically, you're in the clear. You own the parent company. Legally, Brightline Events can't override your decisions. Want me to prep a shutdown notice just in case? I thought for a moment. Not yet. I'm enjoying the trailer before the movie. She chuckled again. You're a dangerous man when you're polite. That's why you bill me extra. After the call, I sat there staring at the laptop, scrolling through the digital guts of Brightline. The sheer control was intoxicating. Every forgotten password, every buried email, it all painted the same picture. Haley had built her empire on my scaffolding. She strutted around giving TED Talk vibes, but I was the one paying for the microphone. There's a line she threw at me once during an argument, back when we still pretended our fights were about work. She'd snapped, "You'd be nothing without me." It hit me then like an insult. Tonight, it hit differently, because the same sentence worked beautifully in reverse. I'd be fine without her, but she'd be nowhere without me. The realization didn't make me angry. It made me peaceful, like realizing your phone's been on airplane mode, and suddenly you're unreachable to everyone who drains you. I decided to take a little stroll through the internal communications platform, Brightline Connect. It's basically corporate Slack for people who think they're too important for emojis. I searched my own name. The results were educational. Ryan's just a shareholder, right? Yeah, Haley handles everything. He's nice though. Quiet. Quiet. The word burned and soothed at the same time. Quiet isn't weakness, it's preparation. I typed a private message to Sharon. Draft me a memo for control transfer options. Don't send it, just keep it warm. She replied instantly. This is going to be fun, isn't it? Oh, I typed back. You have no idea. Around midnight, Haley finally came home. Her heels clicked against the hardwood like a countdown. I closed the laptop and pretended to be half asleep on the couch. She stopped in the doorway, looking at me like I was a wild animal she wasn't sure was sedated. You're still up? She asked. Couldn't sleep, I said. Too busy thinking about all the exciting company developments. Her eyes narrowed. What did you do? Me? I smiled. Nothing major. Just trimmed some fat. Ryan. Relax, I said, raising my glass. Everything's under control. My control. She scoffed. You're unbelievable. Thank you, I said, sipping. I practice. She glared at me for a full 10 seconds before stomping upstairs, muttering something about petty men and their power trips. If irony had calories, that sentence would have fed a village. When she was gone, I pulled out my phone and reread Sharon's text thread. Just seeing those documents gave me the same satisfaction other men probably get from gym selfies. Proof of power. Proof that I wasn't crazy for feeling sidelined. I opened my notes app and wrote a single line. Phase 1. Reclaim the narrative. I wasn't just taking back the company. I was taking back the story. The version of Ryan Bennett the world thought they knew, the quiet husband, the faceless financier, was about to be replaced with something much less predictable. The next morning, I woke up early. Too early. The kind of early that makes your coffee machine groan like, bro, chill. I showered, dressed, and headed to the office before sunrise. The city was still half asleep, which made it the perfect time to start rearranging the chessboard. When I walked into the Brightline Holdings building, the night security guard blinked in surprise. Mr. Bennett? Didn't expect you in this early. Couldn't sleep, I said again, smiling. Thought I'd check on my kingdom. He laughed politely, probably assuming I was joking. I wasn't. Upstairs, the office was empty except for the hum of servers and the faint smell of burnt coffee someone had forgotten to throw out. I logged into my terminal, bypassed 3 layers of admin access, and opened the internal permissions system. For every executive, there's a digital key. I started tweaking them one by one. Nothing too drastic, just small changes. Haley's access to financial approvals, revoked. Her ability to hire new vendors, temporarily frozen. Her permissions to authorize spending over 10 grand, pending review. I sat back and whispered, welcome to the silent treatment, corporate edition. By the time the first employees trickled in, I was gone, like a ghost, leaving behind a system that still looked perfectly normal until someone tried to open a locked door. On the drive home, the sunrise hit the windshield just right, flooding the car with that golden light directors love in redemption scenes. I wasn't redeemed yet, but damn, I was on my way. I turned on the radio, some motivational podcast about manifesting boundaries. I laughed out loud. Already ahead of you, Karen. When I got home, Haley was in the kitchen, dressed in her power suit, scrolling furiously through her phone. She didn't even look up when she said, Starflare called. They said the event's officially canceled. Investors are freaking out. I said, opening the fridge. You want eggs? Ryan, this isn't funny. I shrugged. You're right. It's hilarious. Her eyes flashed. You're sabotaging me. Correction, I said, pouring orange juice. I'm auditing you. You can't just. Actually, I interrupted. I can. And I did. You forgot one thing, Haley. When you build an empire on someone else's foundation, you don't get to complain when the landlord asks for rent. She stood there, speechless, clutching her phone like it was a weapon that had just jammed. I kissed her on the cheek, grabbed my juice, and walked out before she could recover. Always leave them stunned. That's rule 1 of emotional judo. That afternoon, Sharon called again. So, she said, phase 2. Not yet, I said. Let her stew. She needs to realize how powerless she is before we make it official. She hummed. You know, you could teach a masterclass in revenge. I laughed. Maybe I will. But first, I've got a company to reclaim. As I hung up, I looked out my office window at the skyline. For years, I'd been the man behind the curtain, pulling strings while everyone clapped for the magician in the spotlight. Now the curtain was gone, and the magician was about to learn who paid for the stage lights. They call it the silent treatment. But silence isn't empty, it's loaded. And mine was just getting started. If peace had a sound, it would have been that 5-minute stretch between 6:09 and 6:10 p.m., the quiet before hell realized I'd RSVP'd. At exactly 6:10, the first corporate detonation hit. My phone buzzed once, twice, then started convulsing like it had been possessed by the ghost of bad decisions. Texts, emails, notifications, everything lighting up in perfect chaos. You could practically smell the panic through the pixels. By 6:12, I had 24 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and 1 text from my wife, Haley, written entirely in capital letters. What did you do? I smiled. A slow, almost cinematic smile, the kind a man wears when karma finally clocks in for work. I took a sip of my wine, swirled it like I was tasting vintage justice, and texted back. Just what you asked. You said I wasn't invited. Her typing bubbles appeared instantly. 3 dots, then they vanished. Came back. Vanished again. It was like watching Morse code for panic. I could practically hear the tiny screams between her manic thumb taps. By 6:15, Starflare Events had sent the official cancellation blast. Every recipient got a cheery, professional little note. Due to unforeseen changes in company policy, Brightline Holdings has decided to cancel the upcoming gala. We appreciate your understanding and support during this adjustment. Adjustment. God bless PR people and their ability to make a corporate guillotine sound like a yoga pose. I leaned back on the couch, kicked my feet up, and watched the world burn through the soft glow of my phone screen. I've seen men spend fortunes trying to feel this powerful. Me? I just made a phone call before lunch. At 6:20, I got an email from Kelly, Haley's assistant, who had clearly aged 10 years in 15 minutes. Sir, I'm so sorry to bother you, but we have over 200 confirmed guests arriving next Friday, including several high-profile investors. Mrs. Bennett is asking for clarification regarding the cancellation notice. I replied almost immediately. No worries, Kelly. Clarified. The event's canceled. Tell them to invest in Uber Eats tonight. 10 seconds later, she sent another email that simply said, Sir, I didn't reply. Sometimes silence is the only management training people need. By 6:30, the company's internal chat platform, Brightline Connect, looked like Reddit during a stock market crash. Hundreds of pings. Managers, interns, even janitors, all trying to figure out who detonated the social event of the year. I scrolled through the chaos like a man watching fireworks from a yacht. Hashtag General. Did the owner really cancel the gala? Who even has authority for that? Wait, is Haley okay? My aunt's catering company was hired for this. Do we still show up? I just bought a tux. Someone owes me rent. It was like reading poetry. The digital kind. Someone tagged me directly. At Ryan B. Hi, sir. Is this accurate? Should we inform media partners? I typed one sentence and hit send. Yes. HR approves peace and quiet. That one hit harder than I expected. I actually laughed out loud. Loud enough that my dog, Baxter, lifted his head from the couch like, You good, man? Oh, I'm good, I said, scratching behind his ear. I'm better than good. I'm finally HR compliant. By 6:45, Haley's calls were nonstop. I didn't answer any of them. I wanted her to sit in that exquisite purgatory where she wasn't sure if I was furious, vindictive, or having dinner somewhere expensive. For all she knew, I was in Paris right now buying a baguette with her event deposit. When I finally opened my inbox again, There it was. Subject: urgent. Please respond from Haley. Her tone screamed CEO in crisis, but read like a teenager caught sneaking out. Ryan, this isn't funny. The investors are calling me nonstop. The Starflare rep said you authorized this. Please tell me this is a misunderstanding. I typed back. No misunderstanding. You uninvited me. I just followed the company directive. Within 30 seconds, she replied. This isn't how business works. You'd be surprised, I wrote. Turns out owning things comes with perks. You're making me look unprofessional. No, sweetheart, I said aloud as I typed. You did that yourself. Then I wrote. Correction, you're making you look unprofessional. I'm just drinking wine. I hit send and toasted to my own audacity. By 7 p.m., Sharon, my lawyer/enabler, called. Okay, she said, laughter bubbling in her voice. What the hell did you do? Handle the scheduling conflict, I said. Ryan. Yes. I just got 3 calls from event vendors asking if Brightline Holdings is shutting down. Haley's apparently telling people there was a server hack. I choked on my drink. A hack? Oh yeah. She's doing damage control like it's a full-time job. Good, I said. Maybe she'll finally experience employment stress. Sharon laughed so hard she snorted. You're enjoying this way too much. Sharon, I've spent 5 years being the background music in my own marriage. Forgive me for dancing now that I've got the AUX cord. At 7:30, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Haley. This time, she wasn't yelling. Can we please talk in person? I didn't even hesitate. Sure. I'm free in about never. She didn't respond. That silence. Music. Absolute symphony. I flipped my phone to do not disturb, turned on Netflix, and poured another glass. I tried to focus on the show, but my inbox kept lighting up in the corner of the screen, each email subject line better than the last. Vendor payment hold inquiry. Urgent. Investor concerns about fiscal stability. Employee morale crisis update. That last one made me chuckle. Morale crisis? That's what happens when people forget who's footing the bill. At 8 o'clock, I got the piece de resistance, a text from Haley's mother. Ryan, honey, please call Haley. She's very upset. I stared at the message for a full minute, grinning like a man who's been waiting years for this level of irony. Her mother, the same woman who once told me, Haley's career would be fine even if you weren't around, was now begging me to stabilize her daughter's chaos. She'll be fine, I replied. Tell her to hydrate. I almost sent a follow-up saying, and maybe update her resume. But even I have limits. By 8:15, I had an idea. Not a petty one, a productive one. I grabbed my tablet and started drafting a memo. The subject line read, Reallocation of Event Funds, Brightline Employee Wellness Initiative. Inside I wrote, Given the recent decision to cancel unnecessary corporate expenditures, I've reallocated the $70,000 event deposit to the Employee Wellness Program. Funds will be used for mental health coverage, gym stipends, and paid volunteer days. It was beautiful. Corporate poetry. I CC'd HR, accounting, and my assistant, then hit send. 2 minutes later, replies flooded in. This is amazing, Mr. Bennett. Finally, a leadership decision that prioritizes employees. You're the best boss ever. Each compliment was another nail in the coffin of Haley's PR persona. At 9 p.m., I poured one last glass of wine and went out to the patio. The city skyline glittered like it was in on the joke. Somewhere out there, Haley was probably pacing her office, clutching her phone, trying to control a narrative that no longer belonged to her. I took a deep breath, letting the night air fill my lungs, and said to no one, This is what control feels like. My phone buzzed again. This time, not a text, but a call from one of our major investors, Eli Crawford, a man who sounded perpetually like he was about to sell you a yacht you didn't need. Ryan, my man, just got the memo. Love what you did with the funds. Really shows leadership. Didn't care much for the gala anyway. Too many speeches. I smirked. Glad to hear it, Eli. Always trying to keep things efficient. Keep it up, he said. The board will eat this up. After I hung up, I realized something wild. In a single evening, I'd not only ruined Haley's vanity project, but accidentally improved my public image. HR loved me, investors respected me, and the only person mad was the one who uninvited me. That's not karma. That's art. By 10 p.m., the adrenaline started to fade, replaced by a warm, satisfied calm. The kind you get after cleaning out a cluttered garage or deleting your ex's number for real this time. I sat there in the quiet, letting the city hum around me, and thought back to the moment I'd answered Chloe's call that morning. She'd sounded nervous, apologetic, afraid to deliver bad news to Mr. Bennett, the husband. If only she knew she was kicking off the most entertaining night of my year. I finished my wine, leaned back in the chair, and whispered to myself, "You wanted a manager, Haley? You got one." Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, a perfect dramatic touch. I grinned at the sky. Nice timing. The next morning, I woke up to chaos headlines in the company newsletter. Gala canceled. Owner announces employee fund. My inbox was full again, but this time with praise, not panic. My assistant popped into my office, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. "Sir, social media is going crazy. Everyone's calling you the most grounded CEO in the city." "Grounded?" I said, spinning my chair. "That's one word for it." I checked my phone. Still no text from Haley. Good. Let her simmer. She'd made the mistake of thinking silence meant surrender. Turns out, silence was just me charging up. That evening, I poured myself another glass. No longer wine, but bourbon. Strong, smooth, deserved. I raised it toward the window and toasted softly. To peace, patience, and pettiness. Then I added, and to every employee who ever got left off a guest list. Baxter barked once, as if in approval. I smiled. Cheers, buddy. The emails had exploded. The chaos had peaked. And for the first time in years, the world knew exactly who was running the show. You ever walk into your office and instantly know that something catastrophic has happened, like a dog who smells guilt before the crime scene tape goes up? That was me the next morning. The air inside Brightline Holdings tasted like panic and burnt coffee. People were whispering in corners, clutching lattes like emotional support beverages, pretending to read emails that didn't exist. The vibe was post-apocalyptic chic. The fallout from the canceled gala had officially begun. I hadn't even made it to my desk before my assistant, Jenna, intercepted me with a look that screamed, "The villagers have torches." "Morning, boss," she said, breathless. "Just so you're prepared, there's been reaction." "Reaction?" I asked. "Sounds healthy." She blinked. "Sir, the entire events department is having a group cry in Conference B. HR's drafting statements. Vendors are calling nonstop." "Good," I said, stepping past her. "They're staying busy. Productivity is key." I wasn't being cruel. I was being efficient. Chaos reveals competence. You want to know who you can trust? Cancel something expensive and see who panics. When I walked into my office, the phone was already ringing. I let it ring. Twice. 3 times. By the 4th, I answered. "Ryan Bennett," I said, in my calmest "I pay your salary" tone. "Mr. Bennett," a voice huffed on the line. "This is Malcolm Firth, catering director for Starflare. I, just need confirmation. Did Brightline truly pull the plug?" "Absolutely," I said cheerfully. He hesitated. "We had 3 tons of lobster tails arriving Friday." "Ah, perfect," I interrupted. "You can pivot to a pop-up restaurant. The gala that never was. Charge double, call it performance art." "Sir, our deposit." "Non-refundable," I said, already scrolling through my calendar. "Clause 8.2 of your contract." But I admire the hustle. Then I hung up. I'd learned a long time ago that if you sound confident enough, people stop arguing. Confidence is 90% tone, 10% bourbon. By the time I checked my email, the subject lines were a buffet of corporate misery. Urgent, vendor escalation. Investors requesting clarity. Haley demanding statement from leadership. Every line was a course in a 5-star feast of consequences, and I was starving for it. I poured coffee from the office machine. It tasted like printer ink and ambition, but that didn't matter. Every sip was seasoned with satisfaction. At 9:15 a.m., the phone buzzed again. This time it was investor number 1, Douglas Carrington, a man who'd never once called me unless money was crying. "Ryan," he barked, "what the hell is going on? I'm hearing rumors the company's insolvent." I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "Morning, Doug. The company's fine. Better than fine. We're streamlining operations by canceling the biggest PR event of the year." "Exactly," I said. "We've chosen to focus on actual profitability instead of champagne fountains." There was a pause, then a slow, begrudging chuckle. "You're cutting costs. Smart. I like it." "Glad to hear it," I said. We're calling it fiscal fasting. Detox for the balance sheet. He laughed. You're ridiculous, but effective. Story of my life, Doug. The moment I hung up, I marked investor stabilized in my notes. One down, 199 to go. Meanwhile, down the hall, the gossip was spreading like free Wi-Fi. You could tell where Haley had walked by the trail of tense silence. She'd switched to her professional voice, the one that sounded like an inspirational podcast intro. Team, she was saying to whoever was within earshot, we've experienced an unexpected administrative miscommunication. Administrative miscommunication, translation, my husband called my bluff and now I'm improvising the national anthem of damage control. I stayed in my office, door closed, pretending to review quarterly reports while secretly watching the internal chat blow up again. #Leadership Hub. Did anyone approve this cancellation? Haley says the system glitched. How does a system accidentally refund 70 grand? Asking for a friend. Someone else wrote. This feels like that time Netflix canceled our favorite show mid-season. I typed anonymously. Welcome to corporate television. Cancellations build character. 10 seconds later, someone replied. Whoever wrote that deserves a raise. I smiled. I already had one. Around noon, Haley barged into my office. No knocking, no warning, just hurricane energy in heels. She slammed the door behind her so hard that my framed diploma trembled. You've completely humiliated me, she said, voice shaking. Lunch? I asked, holding up my sandwich. She ignored the offer. Do you realize people think we're collapsing? That investors are calling me nonstop. I'm sure they are, I said. It builds character. Her nostrils flared. You think this is funny? Not funny, I said thoughtfully. Entertaining. You're sabotaging me. Correction, I'm auditing you, I said, taking a slow bite. Big difference. Her jaw clenched so tight I could practically hear enamel grinding. Ryan, this isn't how you handle business, she hissed. You don't just cancel something to make a point. Actually, I said, wiping my hands. That's exactly how you handle business when someone forgets who runs the business. She folded her arms. You're being petty. Haley, if I were being petty, I'd have sent out a press release titled Manager Confuses Ownership with Marriage Privilege. This is strategy. She stood there, glaring at me, probably trying to calculate whether stabbing me with a letter opener would void the prenup. Finally, she spun on her heel and stormed out. The sound of her heels echoing down the hall was pure percussion. I leaned back, exhaled, and whispered, and scene. The rest of the afternoon was chaos theater at its finest. The receptionist reported that a florist was in the lobby refusing to leave until someone paid for 600 centerpieces. Accounting refused, citing budget realignment. HR sent a memo about team morale, which was code for everyone's gossiping instead of working. Meanwhile, my inbox filled with passive-aggressive questions from department heads. Just confirming if all client-facing events are under review? Should we inform vendors that all future contracts require CEO oversight? Do we still have jobs? I replied only to the last one. Yes. For now. Efficiency through mystery. Works every time. By 2 p.m., I was halfway through my second coffee when Sharon called again. Status update? She asked, sounding way too gleeful. Imagine the stock market during an earthquake, I said. She laughed. So, thriving. Essentially. I assume Haley confronted you. She tried. And I reminded her who owns the building. Sharon whistled. Remind me never to divorce you. Noted, I said. But you'd at least get alimony in good wine. She chuckled. So what's next? Let it marinate, I said. You don't serve revenge right out of the oven. You let it rest so the flavor sets in. You're a poet of pettiness, Ryan. I try. At 3 p.m., Haley's mother called. Ryan, what is happening over there? She demanded. Haley's distraught. People are calling me for statements. I pretended to be shocked. Wow, really? People care what you think. That's new. Don't be sarcastic with me. Then don't call me during work hours, I said sweetly. I'm busy running the company your daughter thinks she founded. There was a gasp, a sputter, then the blessed sound of a hang-up. 5 minutes later, Haley texted, Did you just hang up on my mother? I replied, No. She hung up on accountability. Around 4, the press finally caught wind. An email from a local business journalist slid into my inbox. Mr. Bennett, sources confirm Brightline's gala was canceled unexpectedly. Any comment? I cracked my knuckles and typed. Brightline Holdings continually prioritizes efficiency and employee well-being. Sometimes that means canceling parties and funding purpose. We believe substance outlasts champagne. Boom. PR gold. Within an hour, 3 business blogs had reposted it with headlines like CEO redirects gala funds to employee wellness. The comments section read like a self-help seminar. Finally, a boss who gets it. We stand a responsible king. I sat there, basking in digital applause while Haley's LinkedIn post about grace under pressure got 2 pity likes. One of them from her mother. By 5 p.m., my day had turned into a highlight reel. Investors satisfied. Staff confused but loyal. PR in my favor. My wife silently combusting somewhere in her office. I poured myself a small drink. Office drawer bourbon, the emergency bottle every exec keeps for existential clarity, and toasted quietly to the skyline outside my window. To trimming the fat, I murmured. And serving it cold. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Jenna. FYI, Mrs. Bennett just told HR she's considering hosting a separate private gala at her expense. I laughed so loud the janitor peeked in. Everything okay, sir? Perfect, I said. Absolutely perfect. If Haley wanted to throw her own event, I'd let her. Nothing highlights a person's ego faster than watching them pay full price for attention. When I finally left the office that evening, the lobby was a graveyard of wilted flowers and unopened catering boxes. The poor intern at the front desk looked up from her computer, wide-eyed. Mr. Bennett, is it true the event's permanently canceled? Yes, I said, pressing the elevator button. Oh, she said, disappointed. It sounded fun. I smiled. Fun's overrated. Try profitable. The elevator doors closed, reflecting my smirk back at me like a mirror in an expensive moral lesson. At home, Baxter greeted me like the only being on earth who didn't care about corporate drama. I poured kibble for him, poured whiskey for me, and sat down to watch the evening news. And there it was, bright and shining on the local business segment. Brightline Holdings CEO cancels gala, redirects funds to employees. The reporter's voice practically purred. Sources say the decision was made to emphasize fiscal responsibility and internal support. Industry leaders are calling it a masterclass in modern leadership. I raised my glass to the TV. Cheers, leadership. A new text flashed on my phone. Haley again. You win. I stared at it for a long moment. Then typed back. No. We both lose. I just lose better. Then I put the phone face down, leaned back, and let the sound of distant thunder roll across the city. Somewhere out there, Haley was probably explaining to a room full of caterers that it's all just a misunderstanding. And me? I was already planning phase 2. Because the Fallout buffet wasn't over yet. I just served the appetizer. There's a particular kind of silence that falls right before a storm hits. The air goes heavy, the lights feel dimmer, and somewhere in the back of your brain a little voice whispers, you might want to start recording this. That was the mood in my house at 7:46 p.m. The day after the Fallout buffet, I was at the stove, making spaghetti like a man who had absolutely nothing to prove. Jazz playing low, glass of wine on the counter, sauce simmering like life was finally simple again. Then came the knock, sharp, urgent, and way too dramatic for the suburbs. I didn't need to check the doorbell cam. There's only one person who knocks like the IRS on performance bonus day, my wife, Haley. I took a sip of wine, turned the heat down, and muttered, and the queen arrives. Another knock, harder this time. Hold your Gucci horses, I called. When I opened the door, there she was, heels, designer trench, hair in that perfectly messy bun that says, I've been crying, but expensively. Her expression was fury with a side of disbelief. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. She snapped before I could even say hi. I gestured to the spaghetti pot. Relax. It's whole grain. Very grounding. Don't you dare joke right now, she said, stepping inside without invitation, trailing perfume and panic. You canceled the gala. I did, I said, stirring the sauce. And yet the world still spins. Wild, isn't it? She threw her bag onto the counter. Do you have any idea what you've done? Of course, I said, handing her a spoon. Try the sauce. You'll see exactly how competent I am. Ryan, this isn't a game. Agreed, I said. It's more like a group project where one person finally did their part. Her mouth fell open. You think this is funny? I had investors, press, clients, and a husband. I interrupted. Remember him? You took him off the guest list. That was a professional decision. Uh-huh, I said. And this was a professional cancellation. She groaned, pacing like a trial lawyer building an argument out of thin air. You're unbelievable. Thank you. I get that a lot. Do you realize how unprofessional this looks? Do you realize how unprofessional it is to uninvite your boss? Her eyes widened. You are not my boss. I laughed, actually laughed. Oh, sweetheart. I literally sign your paychecks. You know the little digital signature at the bottom? That's not decorative. Her cheeks flushed crimson. You're being petty. No, I said, turning off the stove. Petty is removing your husband from a guest list. I spread my arms like a magician revealing the trick. This is poetry. She scoffed. You just humiliated me in front of everyone we know. Correction, I said, setting 2 plates on the counter. You humiliated yourself. I just hit reply all. She glared at me for a full 10 seconds, then finally dropped into a chair like her legs had given up. You don't get it, do you? She said softly. Oh, I get it, I said, handing her a fork. You wanted the spotlight. You just forgot who pays the electric bill. She didn't eat, just stared at the steaming noodles like they held answers. Do you really hate me that much? That one hit harder than I expected. I leaned against the counter, folded my arms, and took a slow breath. I don't hate you, Haley, I said quietly. I just stopped letting you narrate my life. She blinked, caught off guard. That's dramatic. Maybe, I said. But you turned our marriage into a press release. You're the headline, I'm the fine print. That's not fair. Neither was being introduced to clients as the guy who handles numbers. Her voice cracked. I was proud of you. Really? Because it sounded a lot like, here's my husband, the background character. She looked down, twisting the napkin in her hands. You've changed. I smiled. No, I just finally stopped apologizing for existing. The silence stretched long enough for the spaghetti to start sticking together. Finally, she sighed. I know I went too far. I shouldn't have taken you off the guest list. Good, I said. Acknowledgement is step 1. But, she continued, you could have talked to me instead of detonating my career. Haley, I said, leaning forward, talking to you doesn't work. Talking to you is like emailing customer service. You get an automated response 3 days later that says, we value your feedback. She almost smiled, almost. You think you're clever. I don't think, I said. I know. It's what keeps the lights on. Her expression hardened again. You've made me a laughingstock. I shrugged. If people are laughing, at least they're paying attention. Do you even care about our reputation? Which one? The corporate one or the marriage one? Because I'd argue one was already tanking. She slammed her fork down. You are impossible. And yet, somehow, I'm still CEO, I said, sipping my wine. She stood up, pacing again. So what's your endgame, Ryan? You want me to quit? You want to ruin me? I looked at her calmly. No, I want you to remember who helped build your castle before you started locking the gates. Her eyes softened just a fraction. I was just trying to prove myself. To who? I asked. Me? The investors? Your mother? She didn't answer. That's the problem, I said. You're always performing. Every dinner, every meeting, every gala, you're on stage. Meanwhile, I'm the guy sweeping up confetti afterward. She looked up. So what now? Now, I said. We eat. Then we act like adults. Adults? She repeated. Yeah, you remember those? The ones who use communication instead of PR statements. She laughed despite herself. You're such an ass. I've been called worse, I said, serving her plate. But you should eat. Spite burns calories. She gave a reluctant half-smile, took a bite, then sighed. Damn it. It's actually good. Thank you, I said. Revenge pairs beautifully with marinara. For a few blessed minutes, we ate in silence. The tension didn't disappear, but it cooled, like 2 boxers realizing the bell had rung. Then, right as I started to think we might actually have a normal human evening, she said it. I think people are starting to question your judgment. I set my fork down. Whose people? Mine, she said carefully. Clients, vendors. They're wondering what's going on between us. Between us. I echoed. They should worry about what's going on between their invoices and my approval stamp. She rolled her eyes. Ryan. No, really, I said. They should be thrilled. The company's saving money, morale's up, and the press loves me. What's the problem? The problem, she snapped, is that they think I've lost control. I smiled. You did. She froze. Not because I took it, I continued, but because you handed it over the moment you started believing your own press. Her mouth opened, then closed. No words came out. That was new. Eventually, she gathered her things, muttering something about needing air. I walked her to the door, not out of chivalry, but because I didn't trust her not to steal the good cutlery. She paused on the porch, turning back. You think you've won, don't you? I smiled faintly. Haley, I didn't know we were keeping score. But if we are, I'm definitely ahead. Her eyes narrowed. This isn't over. Of course not, I said. Nothing worthwhile ever is. Then she stormed off, heels clicking down the walkway like punctuation marks on a very dramatic paragraph. I shut the door behind her, leaned against it, and exhaled. The quiet that followed was intoxicating, like stepping out of a meeting that could have been an email. I went back to the kitchen, poured the rest of the wine, and turned off the lights. The city outside glowed through the window, soft and indifferent. Somewhere out there, Haley was probably rewriting the story again, trying to make herself the heroine. Let her. Heroes need villains. I was fine being the misunderstood executive with good lighting. I sat at the table, forked up one last bite of spaghetti, and said to Baxter, who had wandered in, You know, buddy, marriage is like a merger. Everyone's excited until someone audits the books. He wagged his tail. Best audience I'd had all week. Around midnight, I got a text from Sharon. Heard she showed up. How's the fallout? I typed back. She yelled. I cooked. I won. You're impossible. That's my brand. Then I set the phone face down and finally let myself laugh. Not the bitter kind, but the genuine, belly-deep laugh of a man who knows he just survived round one and still has most of his dignity intact. Before bed, I checked my email one last time. Among the flood of updates and investor thank yous, one new message stood out. Subject, regarding internal leadership dynamics. It was from HR, politely asking if I'd like to schedule a restorative mediation session with Mrs. Bennett. I stared at it, chuckled, and typed back. Decline. Please reallocate the time to wellness training. I'm feeling great. Then I shut the laptop, turned off the lights, and climbed into bed, the sheets cool and clean and gloriously empty. Some people would call what I did cruel. Others would call it justice. Me? I called it balance. Because after years of being muted in my own marriage, I'd finally found my volume knob. And damn, did it sound good. There's a rare kind of silence that follows total destruction. The quiet hum of a man who has nothing left to lose and just enough coffee to feel smug about it. That was me 2 days after Haley's meltdown at my door. I'd blocked her calls, muted her mother, and set my ringtone to something soothing, rain sounds, because nothing says inner peace like the digital version of Seattle. My phone sat face down on the desk while I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the smell of freshly printed contracts and freedom. The world, shockingly, hadn't ended. Investors were happy, employees were motivated, and the HR department had started referring to me as Zen Daddy behind my back. I didn't mind. I'd earned that title. I spent the morning at the golf course with Sharon, my lawyer-turned-wingwoman, who had a swing that could humble professional athletes and a mouth that could make them blush. She adjusted her visor, lined up a shot, and said, You know, you could fire your wife legally. I could, I said, teeing up, but watching her try to explain all this to 200 angry guests is better entertainment. Cheaper too. She smirked. You're terrifying when you're calm. That's the goal, I said, watching my ball sail clean down the fairway. Calm is just anger with better posture. While the world thought I was on vacation, I was quietly rewriting power structures. New vendor agreements? Under my name. Company policies? Adjusted. Even the office coffee subscription, mine now. Haley used to control everything from event budgets to who got the good parking spots. Not anymore. Every single decision now came through me. It was glorious. Meanwhile, Brightline's internal chat was chaos theater. Someone had leaked the rumor that I'd canceled the gala out of marital spite, and the gossip train was running express. Messages flew by like stock tickers. Did he really do it to teach her a lesson? No way, he's too chill for that. My cousin works in HR. She says he meditates before firing people. I couldn't resist. Under an anonymous username, I typed. He doesn't meditate. He hydrates. The thread exploded. I sat back, sipping my water bottle like a monk who'd just won an argument with God. Then, right around noon, I caught a glimpse of Haley on the office security feed. She was in her department, flailing her arms like a PowerPoint on fire, trying to convince her staff that everything was under control. It wasn't. For a split second, I almost felt bad. Then I remembered the words, Ryan, the guy who works in finance. And the sympathy evaporated faster than my patience. I closed the feed, smiled, and whispered, let her perform. I wrote the script. And just like that, Com had never felt more like revenge with a manicure. By day 3, Haley had switched from rage to diplomacy, a predictable transition in the 5 stages of getting publicly humbled. Denial, anger, negotiation, coffee, and PR. She walked into my office with the kind of forced sweetness that could give you diabetes. She was holding a Starbucks cup like a peace offering. Babe, she started, voice soft and syrupy. Can we talk? I didn't even look up from my laptop. Sure, I said, just not during working hours. Her smile twitched. I brought your favorite, caramel latte, extra shot. How thoughtful, I said, typing an email. You mean the same drink I was holding when you had me erased from your guest list? Brings back memories. She sighed dramatically, the way actresses do when the director says, less emotion, and they take it personally. Ryan, I overreacted. I was under pressure, okay? I just wanted everything perfect. I finally looked up. You uninvited me, Haley. That's not perfection. That's comedy. Please, she said, lowering herself into the chair across from me. Let's just put this behind us. You can come to the event. Which event? I asked. The one I canceled? She blinked. We can reschedule. Rebrand. Make it even better. The relaunch of Brightline. Oh, catchy, I said, nodding. But next time, I'll handle the guest list. Wouldn't want to get ghosted again. Her expression cracked. Is this revenge? No, I said, leaning back. It's a performance review. Her jaw tightened. You're impossible. And you're consistent, I said. But I'll give you credit. You're persistent. Like a bad ad that keeps showing up after you already bought the product. She didn't laugh. The investors are nervous, Ryan. They think we're fighting. Oh, we're not fighting, I said. Fighting requires equal footing. You're explaining. I'm listening. Her lips trembled. You don't have to do this. Do what? I asked. Drink my coffee? Run my company? Exist? She rolled her eyes and stood. You'll regret this. I smiled, sipping the latte she'd brought. Maybe, but it'll be after lunch. She left without another word, her heels clicking down the hall like punctuation marks on a failed press release. When she was gone, I checked my inbox. HR had just confirmed the transfer. The $70,000 gala deposit was officially redirected to the Employee Wellness Fund. I grinned. Perfect, not because I'd want to fight, but because she'd finally realized she wasn't the audience anymore. She'd built her image on applause, and I'd taken away the stage. The apology tour was canceled too. A week later, I decided to throw my own event. Same date, same venue, same caterer. Only difference? The guest list didn't include a single person who called me Ryan from finance. I called it the real backbone of Brightline. The theme? Gratitude, with a side of irony. When I walked into the ballroom that night, the air didn't smell like ego and expensive perfume. It smelled like barbecue sliders, cheap champagne, and actual joy. The janitors were laughing at the dessert table, the drivers were doing selfies near the stage, and the IT guy, who I swear has never smiled before, was dancing like rent just got paid. I grabbed the mic, clinked my glass, and said, to those who never made the guest list but kept the lights on, tonight, you're VIP. The room erupted. Applause, laughter, relief. No pretense, no networking, just people being people. The irony wasn't lost on me. Haley had spent months planning a party meant to impress the investors. I threw one in a week and got more heart, laughter, and loyalty in 2 hours than she's earned in 5 years. Halfway through the night, the company accountant, Walter, 60, nervous energy, permanently looks like he misplaced his keys, pulled me aside. Sir, he whispered, you know your wife's watching this live stream, right? I smiled. Perfect. Tell her we saved her a plate. It's humble pie. He nearly dropped his drink. I gave a short speech after that, shorter than usual, because nobody wants a monologue between free food and music. Look, I said, you've all worked hard. You deserve this. And sometimes leadership isn't about fancy dinners or press photos. It's about showing up for the people who actually make things happen. The cheers that followed were the loudest kind, authentic. I stood there for a second, taking it in. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't the guy sitting quietly in the background while someone else took credit. I was the man at the front of the room, surrounded by people who actually mattered. The DJ played Don't Stop Believin', which felt cheesy and perfect all at once. Someone shoved a drink into my hand. Someone else dragged me onto the dance floor. And for a brief moment, life didn't feel like a war. It felt like a win. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught the live stream chat blowing up, employees tagging Haley with laughing emojis, toasts to the real boss. One person even writing, "Finally, a party worth attending." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Sometimes silence is the best victory speech. By Monday morning, the internet had already done its thing. My little employee appreciation night wasn't just company gossip anymore. It was trending. Hashtag Brightline Real Team. Photos flooded social media. Me handing out bonuses, the janitors doing conga lines, the catering staff toasting with paper cups. The post Haley's PR team had scheduled for her grand gala got buried faster than her LinkedIn endorsements. I walked into the office like a man who had finally deleted a bad memory. People clapped. Actual applause. Someone even whistled. I gave a mock bow and said, "Please, no autographs before coffee." By 10 a.m., my assistant walked in holding a printed stack of news articles. "You're in business today, modern leadership," and someone just made a meme of you pouring champagne labeled fiscal responsibility. "Finally," I said, "a brand I can stand behind." At 10:17, the elevator dinged, and in walked Haley, dressed to kill, or at least maim. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept since the hashtag was born. She closed the door behind her, didn't speak for a full 10 seconds, then asked softly, "So, what now?" I didn't even look up from my screen. "Now," I said, "now we get back to work." "Ryan," she said, voice cracking. "Everyone's talking. The investors, the staff, the board. I can't even walk into a meeting without people whispering." I turned my chair slowly, the way villains do in movies before they reveal the plot twist. "Then maybe," I said, "it's time to stop walking into meetings." She frowned. "What does that mean?" I slid a folder across the desk. "Your resignation letter. I'd like it by Friday." Her eyes went wide. "You're firing me?" "No," I said, leaning back. "I'm promoting your freedom." She stared at me, furious, humiliated, and maybe, deep down, a little impressed. "You can't just erase me." "Of course not," I said, smiling. "You'll always be part of Brightline's history, just not its future." She stood there for a moment, trembling, then finally gathered her bag. "You're going to regret this." I shook my head. "Haley, I already regretted staying quiet this long." When she left, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt lighter, like someone had taken a 20-pound trophy off my chest. Later that evening, I walked into the now empty ballroom where it all began. The lights shimmered softly, and the ghost of last week's chaos felt almost peaceful. For years, I'd been written out of my own story, quiet, patient, polite. But now, I was rewriting it, one clause, one contract, one decision at a time. I raised a glass to no one in particular and said softly, "To the man who was removed from the guest list and decided to own the party instead." And damn, that toast never tasted better.